Hi, I'm Paul Carroll, technical writer for Digital Photo Magazine, and welcome to this video tutorial on creating a composite firework image in Photoshop. Firework shots definitely have the wow factor and always make for an eye-catching subject. But to create a really strong firework image, it's essential that the shot has some foreground interest too, and getting a great shot of both can sometimes be difficult to achieve in camera. A much easier way is to get some nice shots of the firework blooms and a cracking low light landscape separately, and then you can combine them together for the perfect firework shot. And that's exactly what we'll do in this technique. We'll start with this superb low light urban landscape, which I've captured using a long 30-second exposure, which has blurred the movement in the Ferris wheel and helped achieve a deep blue saturated sky. We'll then use a couple of adjustment layers just to lighten the sky a little bit and enhance those blues. And then we'll use layers, blending modes and the eraser tool to seamlessly blend in 3 firework blooms and produce our final composite image. Now I'm using Photoshop Elements for this video tutorial, but this technique is compatible with the full version of Photoshop too. Okay, I'm just going to minimize this image and then we can get started. Start by opening the image wheel.jpg from off the CD into Photoshop Elements, or as I say, you can use the full version of Photoshop too. Now it's essential that your layers palette is open for this technique, and you can see that I've got mine open on the right hand side of the screen here. If your layers palette isn't on screen, then simply open it by going up to the window menu and click on layers. The first thing I want to do to my image is just lighten it ever so slightly, and I'm going to do that using a levels adjustment layer. Now there's 2 ways that you can add an adjustment layer to your image, and I'm going to be using both methods in this technique, and I'll show you the reason why. The easiest way is just to use this half black, half white circle icon at the top of the layers palette. Or if you're using the full version of Photoshop, you'll find it at the bottom of the layers palette. This is the easiest way to add an adjustment layer. Simply click on the icon and it gives you a drop down menu of the different adjustment layers that you can add, and I want to add the levels adjustment layer. I'm just going to click OK for a second without making any changes, and I'll show you the other way that you can add a levels adjustment layer or any adjustment layer to your image, and that's up in the layer menu and going down to new adjustment layer, and again you get the same fly out menu that you get when you press the icon in the layers palette. But if I select levels from this list, you now see that I get a new layer dialog box, and it gives me a couple of options such as group with previous layer, change the blending mode of the layer and the opacity. And we're going to use the group with previous layer option a little bit later on in the technique. Okay, so for the time being I'm just going to cancel that and go back to my adjustment layer that I've already created in the layers palette. Now this demonstrates the real advantage of using adjustment layers as opposed to making adjustments directly onto my background layer, because I can go back and I can tweak my adjustments as much as I like later on during the technique if the need arises. So to make further adjustments to this adjustment layer, all I need to do is double click on the histogram icon there, and again it brings up my levels palette. So I'm just going to move the palette out of the way so that you can see the image, and to lighten the image I'm just going to click and hold on the gamma slider, and I'm going to drag it to the left towards the black point slider to an input level of 1.3, and you can see that's having a good effect at lightening my image. So I'm quite happy with that. I'll just click OK. Next I just want to make the blues a bit richer and more saturated, so I'm going to do that with a hue saturation adjustment layer. So back up to the half black half white icon, this time select hue saturation from the list, and I only want to adjust the blues in the image. So in the edit box I'm just going to click on the downward arrow where it currently says master and select blues. Now the adjustments that I make to hue, saturation and lightness will only affect the blues in the image. So I'm going to increase the saturation to around +20, and you can see that that's really making the blues a lot more vivid. And I'm just going to reduce the brightness ever so slightly because the sky's gone a little bit bright now with that increase in saturation. So I'm going to take the lightness of the blues to -5. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to click OK. Next, open the image fireworks_1, and there you go. You can immediately see the problem with trying to capture great fireworks shots all within camera. We've got a really great exposure of the fireworks, but the foreground is very underexposed. We've got no foreground interest at all, and it's not a very interesting shot. So the first thing we need to do is make a selection of the firework blooms, and I'm going to do that using the lasso tool, which is up in the toolbox about a third of the way down. You can see at the moment we've got the polygonal lasso up, but if I just hold down my left mouse button, I get this little fly out menu, and I can select the lasso tool from the list. Now I just need to click with my mouse and make a very rough selection of the firework blooms. There we go. Hold down the control key and press the letter C. That's going to copy the fireworks to the computer's memory. Now if I go up to the window menu and down to wheel.jpg, come back to my urban landscape, hold down the control key and press the letter V, and that's going to paste the fireworks on top of my urban landscape background. Next I need to change the blending mode of the layer where my fireworks are sitting, and I can use that using the blending mode box at the top of the layers palette here. Currently where it says normal, if you just click on the drop down arrow, you get a list of the different blending modes, and they all affect the way that the top layer interacts with the layer beneath it. In this case I want to use the screen blending mode, which effectively hides the black pixels on layer 1 so that they don't show up on the layer beneath, our background layer. And you can see with that selected, the image is starting to look a lot better already. Next I need to reposition the fireworks, and I can do that using the Move tool, which is the first icon in the toolbox. I'm just going to click on the Move tool and then click on my fireworks with my left mouse button, and I can move them around the image wherever I like. I'm going to place them roughly about there. Okay. So if I zoom in a bit tight on the fireworks, you can see that the blending's looking a lot better with the screen blending mode selected, but it's still not seamless. We've still got this rough edge here. So we're going to use another levels adjustment layer, but this time we're going to use the layer, new adjustment layer, levels route of getting there, because I want to use the group with previous layer option, just by ticking in that box there and clicking OK. And if I just move the levels palette out of the way a second, you can now see on our levels 2 adjustment layer, we've got this little arrow on the left hand side of the histogram icon, which indicates our new adjustment layer is clipped to layer 1. And what that means is any adjustments that I now make in my levels palette will only apply to layer 1, and they won't affect the background layer. So if I just move the palette out of the way, I'm going to click on the black point slider, which is this black icon on the left hand side of the histogram, and I'm going to drag it to the right, and as I do so you can see that I'm just blending in the background behind the firework bloom, and that's looking a lot better already. I'm going to go to an input level of around 30. That adjustment has made the firework blooms a little bit washed out though, don't quite have the impact that they once had. So just to brighten them up, but without bringing back that background detail, I'm just going to use the gamma slider. So again, click and hold. This time I'm going to drag it to the left, and that's just going to brighten up the fireworks. There we go. So I'm going to go to an input level of around 1.6. And when I'm happy with that adjustment, all I need to do is click OK. Okay, so the blending with the sky is a lot better, but we've still got a little bit of a problem because some of the firework blooms here are spilling over on top of our Ferris wheel, and obviously here in front of the town hall, which doesn't look realistic because obviously perspective wise these objects are in front of where the fireworks will be exploding in the sky in the distance. So we just need to erase away some of these details so it looks like the fireworks are sitting behind these objects. So go over to the toolbox, I'm going to select the eraser tool, and up in the options bar I can configure my brush. So I'm going to select about 100 pixel brush, 100% opacity, and I want a nice soft edge brush which I can get by holding down the Shift key and clicking on the left hand square bracket on the keyboard. Now I need to be on the correct layer, so over in my layers palette I need to click back on layer 1, and now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit tighter. I can work a little bit more accurately. Around 100% is best for this type of work. Press the letter E on the keyboard and that's going to bring up my eraser tool again, and now I can just start erasing away these details on the firework blooms that is sitting in front of the town hall. I'm just going to get rid of this really bright firework as well because that doesn't look particularly natural. Okay, something like that. There we go. So we've got no fireworks spilling over there, and I'm just going to hold down the space bar on the keyboard and come over to the Ferris wheel here, and again I'm just going to erase away these firework blooms which are spilling over on top of the Ferris wheel. There we go. That's looking a lot better. Hold down the control key, press the letter 0, and I'm going to that will zoom me out to full screen. So there we go, that's our first firework added. Something just to mention here is obviously we've got some water in the foreground here, which is creating a really nice bit of foreground interest for our shot. And we've got the reflections of the Ferris wheel and the town hall. And any firework blooms which were sitting low enough in the sky would also need to be mirrored in this part of the water, so the effect is as realistic as possible. I did contemplate putting the first firework lower in the sky so that the blooms would need to be reflected in the water, but I think with the fireworks sitting this low it doesn't look particularly appealing, and I prefer it in its original position up there, where the fireworks aren't really spilling low enough to be reflected in the water. Okay, so to add the second firework bloom, we basically need to repeat exactly the same process as we did for the first firework. So open the image fireworks_2.jpg from off the CD. Select the lasso tool again from the toolbox and make a rough selection around the bloom. Hold down Control, press the letter C. Go back to our wheel.jpg image, making sure that levels 2 layer is highlighted. Hold down the Control key and press the letter V. That pastes in our second firework. Select the Move tool from the toolbox. Click on our second firework. I'm just going to position that one in the top left hand corner here. Back over to our layers palette, and in the blending mode box click on the drop down arrow, and again we want to select the screen blending mode from the menu. Back up to our layer menu and down to new adjustment layer and across to levels. We need to tick the group with previous layer option and click OK. And this time I'm going to set my black point slider to around 40 and my gamma slider to 1.6 and click OK. None of the bloom from this firework is spilling over any of our foreground interest here, so there's no need to use the eraser tool on firework 2. So we can go straight on to add firework 3, which is opening the image fireworks_3 from off the CD. Select our lasso tool again, make another rough selection. I'm going to take in these sort of little embers that are in the sky as well. Control and C to copy. Back to our background image, Control and V. Again, you need to make sure that you're on the levels 3 layer when you copy in the third firework. If you're still sitting on layer 2, you're going to copy our third firework underneath our clipped levels 3 layer. So you just need to make sure that you're on the levels 3 adjustment layer when you paste, and then that will paste our third firework at the top of the layer stack. Okay, so select the Move tool again. This time I'm going to place our third firework in the top right hand corner up there. Change the blending mode to screen, up to the layer menu and down to new adjustment layer and across to levels. Again, tick the group with previous layer box and click OK. That's just going to clip our levels adjustment layer to our third firework. And this time I'm going to take my black point slider just by clicking and dragging again take it to the right to an input level of 50, and this time I'm just going to use my gamma slider just to darken down the fireworks. So I'm going to take it to an input level of around 0.6 and click OK. Now that third firework in the top right hand corner there, it's looking a little bit pathetic compared to the other two. So I'm just going to click on layer 3, hold down the control key on the keyboard and press the letter T, which brings up the transform bounding box, and that's going to allow me to make the firework a little bit bigger. Up in the options bar, make sure that you've got the constrain proportions box ticked, and then just click in the bottom left hand corner with your left mouse button, and then we can just drag the firework, make it a bit bigger in the sky. That's looking a bit more impressive. So once you're happy with the new size, just click the green tick to accept the change. And finally, just like we did with our first firework, we need to erase away these firework blooms which are spilling out over the Ferris wheel. So I'm just going to press Z on the keyboard, zoom in tightly on this area here, and zoom in a bit tighter than that to around 100%. Hit the letter E on the keyboard, which is select my eraser tool. And making sure that I'm on layer 3 in my layers palette, I can now just erase away these blooms which are spilling out over the Ferris wheel. So it's quite quick work. I've got a soft edge brush here, so I can just work quite roughly. Hold down the space bar just to scroll around the image, get rid of these sort of little embers here. There we go, that's looking pretty good. Any more? There's one there. Just go right up to the edge of the Ferris wheel there, make it look as natural as possible. There we go, quite happy with that. So there we go, a stunning composite firework image, created using a low light urban landscape and then adding 3 firework blooms which were shot completely separately, and I think you'll agree it makes for quite an eye-catching image. I hope you've really enjoyed this technique. Give it a go using the start images from off this month's CD. And then this bonfires night, make sure you go out and grab some of your own firework shots to produce stunning composite images of your own. Okay, cheers.